You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholics, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a trunk, just like Jim. It's more to life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more to life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club, light some bottles, impress them girls. It's more to life.
The whole fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And who dat? And I'm Ethan. And first thing I want to say is I got 2 new subscribers. I wasn't able to identify them, but I still want to shout them out and say that I appreciate them. If I was able to identify them, I definitely would shout them out and acknowledge them. But regardless of that, I still really appreciate them, and anyone that subscribes and likes or anything like that, I truly appreciate that. That helps grow the channels, and it means a lot to the channel. And it just, like I said, that there's people out there that like what I do. You know, I really just do this because I like it, but that other people like what I do, like it's awesome. So keep on helping me grow, and that I'm to a rounded off number, that I'm to 20, I'm to 20 now. Let's shoot for 30 now, and 30, 20, 30, 30, 40, 100. Let's just keep grinding. But anyways, we got a lot to get in here, and you know what we do. So can I get a menu? And so the first thing I did, we were just the last Saints podcast I did, some main course that we did. I was just pumped up. So after watching the game live, a lot of times I like to do, I like to rewatch the game, because there's a lot of stuff you miss when you're jacked up, and a lot of your judgment's kind of cloudy. So I rewatch the game. So just kind of want to go over a couple things about that. And I've kind of got a little mixed up here on my subjects here, and let's go over this. So I was shouting out some players there, and kind of missed one, because I mentioned Michael Thomas about the amazing game he had, you know, and talked about Jameis Winston a little bit, how he was throwing great passes, but forgot to mention Jarvis Landry. I mean, he was amazing. You know, he was amazing. He had, you could argue maybe he didn't have the touchdowns, which touchdowns are probably the biggest part. You know, the 2 touchdowns, you know, points are great too, but he also had like the 50-yard touchdown to get him in field goal, or 50-yard catch to get them in field goal range. And but he had the 7 catches for 114 yards, you know, and the big catches, some of the big catches that keep the drives alive. And even Olave too, you know, had the big 2-point conversion. So just that's what we thought going into the season, that our wide receiver core was so much more upgraded, just so much better than it was last season. And that definitely showed. It took a while. It took a while for it to finally show up, but when it did, it showed up big time. And so I definitely want to shout out Jarvis Landry, because he was big time. You could argue, I don't even think you have to argue, but he had just as good a game as Michael Thomas did. So I definitely want to acknowledge how good he was. And then this is one. So I was hard on the refs, hard on the refs for for some penalties they called to keep some drives alive for the Atlanta Falcons. And like I, I mentioned that I thought Marshawn Lattimore just was celebrating at the very end of at the end of the game, and that set up the field goal attempt, 63-yard field goal attempt that ended up uh, getting blocked. And I thought that he just like maybe just accidentally knocked over a Falcons player on that play. And I rewatched it, and I actually saw like could see it like at the top of the screen there that a Falcons player kind of just barely pushed him, and then he just shoved the Falcons player like completely to the ground on that play. And so no, I can't excuse that now. The refs made the right call on that, and that is just a boneheaded play by Marshawn Lattimore. So I could lay off the refs a little bit, but they still made some horrible calls, especially the no call fumble in the first half with like about a minute left. But Marshawn Lattimore, you got to be better than that. That goes. He had some similar plays like that last year, like in the game against Seattle when DK Metcalf was getting under his skin. And it's always, you've heard this hundreds of times, it's not the first guy that gets caught, it's always the second guy. And that, man, we would probably, even though he's one of the best players on a defense, we would be roasting and hating Marshawn Lattimore right now if that would have costed us the game. And it wouldn't have been because it was an accident, because he was celebrating and accidentally knocked over a Falcons fan, because it wasn't even that hard of a push by the Falcons player. Falcons player kind of just shrugged him off and knocked him away because he was mad that he maybe lost and the game was over. And then Marshawn Lattimore just vehemently shoved him to the ground. And I don't even think it was really a flop. Like it was a pretty hard push, and that was just stupid. So yeah, Marshawn Lattimore, you got to do better. You got to do better, because on top of that, the holding play on Drake London that kept the last drive, the second to last drive by the Falcons alive, that almost ended the game. That was a play that could have really gone both ways. That wasn't a horrible call. Like, of course, we're Saints fans, so we hated it, but that wasn't a horrible call either. So, Marshawn Lattimore, you had two really bad calls in that game. So, just noting that Marshawn Lattimore, you got to be better. And then the other one also, so the Saints, so we hated the Saints defense. We were really for the first three quarters, you read in Twitter comments and just comments on Facebook and things like that, talking about just talking about how they were getting run over for three quarters. But realistically, if you go back and watch the game, so maybe they were giving up a lot of yards running and stuff like that. But secondary, they were pretty good covering the pass. But that's not really what I'm getting at. I'm not getting at about the yards and stuff getting at, but they were ball hawking when you think about it. Because Pete Warner, he forced a fumble, and then Marcus May, he forced a fumble. And if the refs would have called it right, Bradley Roby would have forced a fumble. So that would have been three fumbles that they would have forced and would have recovered if the refs would have called them right. So is the defense back to being ball hawk? I know it's just one sample size of a game, but they were out there ball hawking. And the one that Marcus May recovered may have saved the day, because if the Saints would have went in and scored a touchdown, then the Falcons would have went up by 30-10, and I don't know if the Saints would have been able to come back from 30-10 now. Like, okay, they were able to do 26-10, but 30-10, I think it would have been over at that point. A 20-point lead is a little bit different from 16. So the Saints were out there ball hawking. So, so that they played bad in in some regards, but it was impressive how they were out there forcing some fumbles. And then, so I think my hot take hit a little bit as well, because so my hot take hidden. I think I'm gonna take half credit for this because I said I said Marcus May. That's who I highlighted for my hot take. I said that he was gonna maybe make a pick six or interception return for a touchdown, or maybe a fumble six return for a touchdown, which he didn't score a touchdown off of this turnover, but he had the fumble, the game-saving fumble, forced fumble that was recovered by Tyrann Matthews, and that basically saved a touchdown, and he had a great game. He may have got run over by Cordell Patterson a couple times, but he had a great game. He had 9 total tackles, 8 solo, and 1 assist, and that forced fumble. So, and he may not have had the celebration I was talking about afterwards, but I'm going to take half credit for my hot take for Marcus May. So on my rewatch, I saw some. There was a lot of bad on the defense and stuff like that, but there was a lot of good as well. So when the Saints win and stuff, when you go back and watch a rewatch, it's a lot more enjoyable. Let me just say that. So that's all for the rewatch. So move on to something else here. So I guess the bad news that came out after the game, which really I didn't even notice this, which it's nice. It's nice when you get through an entire game and you don't really notice like really any injuries. I guess really the only one people really noticed was I guess Jameis Winston when he went in the tent and then he came out and played amazing. And so that's really the only one anyone noticed. But then I guess it was on Monday, or I guess it was on Monday. It comes out that Alvin Kamara had a rib injury, so maybe that's why we didn't see Alvin Kamara taking that direct snap for the 2-point conversion, even though it probably should have been Taysom Hill. So, but from what we've heard from a couple different people is that it should be fine. Dennis Allen said he should be all right, or that he should be ready for the week 2 matchup, or that he should get an uptick in snaps. I don't know if I really believe that. And there's been since then there's been a corresponding signing for that, and that's Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray's back, and I actually have a number 28 here, and this isn't a Latavius Murray jersey. This is actually an old the original 28 Mark Ingram rookie jersey from way back in 2011 when his jersey first dropped. This is like what he was wearing in preseason. But yeah, this is interesting. This is kind of concerning to see how hurt Alvin Kamara actually is. So is he actually gonna play on week 2 against the Bucks, or is this just depth to add to the practice squad because maybe Dwayne Washington is hurt? And because now with week 1's over, you can sign veterans without their contracts being guaranteed for the whole season. Yeah, but I really like Tay Train, Latavius Murray, I like Tay Train. So, and he had some really good games with the Saints. I love the game that he had against Chicago Bears when he rushed for like 120 yards, and almost like any game that he had with the Saints where he had more than like 15 carries, he almost had 100 yards rushing. So just for depth, regardless, I think this is a good signing, but I hope it doesn't mean that he's hurt a significant injury. Let's hope not. Let's hope it's not like Drew Brees to where we hear he's got a rib injury and then next thing we know he's got 1 broken rib, and then next thing we know he's got 2 broken ribs. Next thing we know, he's got 4 broken ribs, and next thing we know, he's got 10 broken ribs. Let's hope that's not the case. So then, last bit. This is, I don't know if this is. I think I'm one of the few people. This is kind of back to. I mentioned, I guess, talking about Jameis Winston, his injury, but this is more just about Jameis on a personal level, and I almost forgot to mention this. And this is so people want to take Jameis Winston like more seriously, and this is something that's been shown a lot lately. Like they asked like this was like the after the game interview with him when he was with Michael Thomas, and they said that he was like hurting or whatever, and the interviewer asked him like where he was hurt or whatever, and he just said everywhere, all over, and like people have like highlighted that and like shown it like multiple times and think it's like so hilarious or something, and people just like take like everything he does and thinks it's like funny, but for some reason I don't really get that. I don't think it's funny, I guess. I think that adds to why people like don't take Jameis like seriously. Like he's like people like take him as like a walking meme. So like if you like as a Saints fan like wanna want Jameis Winston as our quarterback to like be taken more seriously, like I, I think you to like help that you shouldn't like buy into that stuff. Like and it's like all like the big eye stuff, like and like the way he says stuff, like I don't know. It's just not that kind of stuff. At least I don't think it's funny. I don't know. I think it's just I just don't know how they take like everything that he says and make it a sound clip or something. But I don't know. They, they just try to take everything he says and try to disregard him, disregard what he says, and on top of like how he played, like he played good, had like no interceptions, and don't really talk about that. But then players like Derek Carr throw 3 interceptions, and no one talks. You don't really hear about how bad he played. And then players like Joe Burrow had what like 4 interceptions. I know he's a younger quarterback, so maybe that's why people aren't too hard on him. But you don't really hear about that. And then I guess a lot of the I was gonna kind of mention Matthew Stafford because he threw like 3 interceptions and played terrible. But if you did look at Twitter and Facebook, quite a few people did talk about him. But like if Jameis Winston was to have like a game like that, people would be calling for his head. But I just I just wish people would quit buying into the narrative that anytime Jameis says anything, he's a clown or that he's goofy or that he's trying to be funny or that he's trying to be memed or something, because I don't take it that way. Like I want him to be taken as that he's trying to be a leader. He's trying to just he's just trying to talk like me or you, and the whole big eyes thing. Hell, if you've been watching me enough, like hell, if I'm trying to think about something, I'm like looking like this, I'm looking like this. Hell, I got big eyes too. So I just like I said, it's not funny. I don't find it comical. But that's enough of that. Let's get on to the game a little bit. And so I talked about our injuries. So the Bucks, they had quite a few injuries in their game against the Cowboys. And So this could be beneficial to the Saints. And one of the ones that I was a little surprised about was Chris Godwin. I was surprised that he's come back so early. It hasn't even been a year since he tore his ACL against the Saints when PJ Williams got him low and the Saints 9-0 win against them. So the fact that he came back so early already was a little bit of surprise. I would have thought that he had maybe missed the first month or so, and he came back, but he didn't. Wasn't his ACL that he ended up hurting. It was his hamstring. But a lot of times when someone has an injury or something, they're overcompensating, not trying to hurt that injury, that ACL, and they end up hurting something else. And that looks kind of like that's what happened here. So he's got a hamstring injury, and hamstring injuries are tricky. So probably, I doubt he'll play. He'll probably miss a couple games because of that. So never want people to be hurt or anything, but that's beneficial to the Saints. And then also their left tackle, the Saints or the Buccaneers offensive line is already decimated. They're already missing their starting center. He was already down with the ACL. So Donovan Smith, man, when he went down with that injury, I thought he broke his forearm, but it turns out that looks like he just, I guess, hyperextended his elbow, I guess. Like when he went down, I originally thought it was his knee, but then they showed the replay. Man, it looked like he broke his forearm. And then from the reports I'm hearing now, they just said he badly hyperextended his elbow, and it's a pain threshold thing, and that he could possibly play. But when you see the injury, man, it looked really bad. So I would be surprised if he played. So, I mean, those are just two really beneficial injuries if those two guys don't play against Saints, especially the offensive line ones, because the Buccaneers already have a lot of injuries on the offensive line. And, that's really the way that you beat the Buccaneers is getting to Tom Brady, getting him off the spots. And definitely in the 4 regular season games that the Saints have beaten the Buccaneers, that's how they've won, is getting to Tom Brady. So that should definitely be a development. And then the player to really watch for in that game for the Buccaneers is Leonard Fournette. He had probably his best game ever for the Buccaneers against the Cowboys. He had 21 carries for 127 yards. And the reason I said that is because of how good Cordell Patterson was against us, because he had about the same amount of yards. He had about 20 carries for 120 yards as well. So if Leonard Fournette has as good a game as Cordell Patterson did against us, then we may be in trouble. So that's the main player I would be concerned about if against the Buccaneers, because if he has that kind of game, and then Tom Brady is just able to play off that and do play actions and throw a couple of deep balls to Mike Evans and some other of his other weapons, then it may end up being a long day for us. And then let's get to hot take and prediction here. I think on my hot take, after Peyton Turner had his first real big play for the Saints with the blocked field goal, I think he's probably, with all the offensive line struggles that the Buccaneers are having, I think he's going to have this first sack of his career, or not his first sack of his career. I think he already had a sack in his first game of his career against the Carolina Panthers last year. But I think he's going to have a sack in this game against Tom Brady. And then I think the score in this game, I'm going to pick the Saints to win, but I think the Buccaneers defense looked pretty good against the Cowboys. So I think, once again, I'm picking this to be a low-scoring game, and I'm picking the Saints to win 17-14. And think that's all I have for you this evening. So who dat? And with that, can I get a check, please?